Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Rain fell in fine drops on Willow Creek, a modest neighborhood where the houses looked as if they had seen more hardship than laughter. In a small wooden house with peeling blue shutters, 17-year-old Emma held her little brother Noah close. The baby, barely 5 months old, cried incessantly, hungry and shivering under his thin blanket. Emma felt her tears welling up, but she held them back. She had to be strong for him, even though fear and despair overwhelmed her. Her gaze turned to the only person who could help them, her Aunt Margaret. Margaret sat in the old leather armchair in the living room, her face marked by fatigue and years of supporting her own family. Her hands, rough but soft, rested on her knees. She looked at Emma with a mixture of tenderness and concern. "Auntie, don't you need a baby?" Emma asked in a trembling voice, almost a whisper. "Take my little brother, he's 5 months old and hungry." The words hung in the air, heavy and heartbreaking. Margaret felt her heart clench. She knew the decision she made that night would change everyone's destiny. She thought of her own past, of the nights she herself had been alone and afraid, and of the silent promise she had made to herself, never would a child in her family go unprotected. Emma, for her part, held her breath, praying that her aunt would agree. She knew she wouldn't be able to take care of Noah alone for much longer. His eyes, full of tears and pleading, never left hers. After a long silence, Margaret leaned over to Noah, gently took him in her arms, and held him close. The baby, as if realizing that his life was about to change, stopped crying for a moment and looked at Margaret with his big, bright eyes. "Okay," Margaret whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'll take care of it, Emma. For a few days, and maybe longer." Emma felt an immense weight lift from her shoulders. She sat on the floor, tears finally flowing freely, and watched her aunt gently rock the baby. For the first time in weeks, she felt a fragile hope rise in her heart. In that little house in Willow Creek, a silent promise had just been made, to protect this baby, no matter what, no matter the cost. The Willow Creek neighborhood wasn't large, but every alley told a story. The houses, often made of wood or aged brick, bore the marks of time and storms. The yards were modest, sometimes overgrown with weeds, but they exuded a simple, warm life. The neighbors all knew each other, sometimes sharing meals, sometimes arguing, but always with a sense of interdependence. Emma, her arms still trembling from putting Noah to bed, stared out the window at the rain trickling down the cobblestones. She knew her mother, Catherine, wouldn't be back that evening. The hospital had called her earlier that afternoon. A serious infection was preventing her from leaving her bed. Emma had tried to hide her worry from her little brother, but he could sense the tension. Noah, though still small, only calmed when Emma whispered sweet nothings in his ear. Margaret sat in the living room armchair, watching the children with a mixture of compassion and determination. She wasn't naive. Taking Noah was no easy feat. A baby, even for a few days, required attention, patience, and sacrifice. But she couldn't refuse Emma. She had seen the same glimmer of fear and courage in her niece's eyes that she herself had had when she had to face her own difficulties. "Emma, you know this won't be easy," Margaret said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but firm. "I'll take care of Noah, but you'll have to help me. I need to know you can handle some things too." Emma nodded briskly. "I'll do anything you want, Auntie, just please don't leave him alone." Margaret stood up, grabbed an extra blanket, and carefully wrapped Noah in it. The baby gurgled and pressed his tiny fist against Margaret's hand. In that innocent gesture, Margaret felt a new but precious responsibility arise within her. Time seemed to stretch out in the silent house. Emma began to put away Noah's few belongings, diapers, bottles, clothes. Each item now seemed vitally important. The young girl understood that every action could ensure her brother's survival. Outside, the wind whistled through the tree branches, and the rain continued to fall. But inside, a fragile warmth began to settle. Emma and Margaret, united by a common goal, formed a small, protective core around Noah. In these simple yet intense moments, a silent but unbreakable bond was born between them. Emma knew that life would never be the same again, and she felt, deep down, that despite the difficulties to come, this night marked the beginning of a new family, united by love and courage. The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the tired shutters of the house. The sky remained overcast, promising another day of light rain. Margaret had risen early, having stayed up most of the night to calm Noah. The baby, exhausted but reassured, slept peacefully in her arms. Emma, sitting on the floor, watched her aunt with admiration and concern. "Auntie, are you sure you can keep it?" Emma asked in a weak voice, afraid of hearing a refusal. Margaret took a deep breath, her eyes wandering into space for a moment. She thought about her own past, the times she'd been alone and vulnerable. She remembered her sister, who had left her at the orphanage when she was 6, and the void it had left in her life. She couldn't let Emma and Noah feel that same abandonment. "Emma," Margaret began, her voice trembling. "It's not an easy decision. Taking a baby is never simple. But I can't leave you alone with him." Emma felt her heart sink, but a thin smile appeared on her lips. "Thank you, Auntie, thank you so much." Margaret got up and placed Noah in his crib, making sure the blanket covered him properly. She watched the baby sleep for a few moments, his delicate, fragile features giving her an immense sense of responsibility. She knew that from that moment on, every choice she made would have a direct impact on this child's life. "We're going to make a plan," Margaret said, looking at Emma. "You're going to help me take care of him. I'm going to show you how to make his bottles, how to change his diapers, and you're going to help me keep the house tidy. Together, we're going to make it." Emma nodded determinedly. She knew her life had just changed radically, but she felt it was the right thing to do. She understood that loving and protecting her brother would not be a burden, but a mission. That morning, as the rain continued to fall on Willow Creek, an important decision had been made. Margaret had agreed to take Noah under her wing, and Emma had found in her an ally, an unwavering support. For the first time in weeks, the house seemed to breathe again. The walls, once stifling and silent, now vibrated with promise and courage. And in this small home, a new family was beginning to form, united by love, responsibility, and hope. The sun was setting below the horizon when the rain finally stopped, giving way to a heavy, gray sky. Margaret's house seemed quieter than ever, inhabited only by Noah's ragged breathing and Emma's soft footsteps as she busied herself around him. The little baby, who had been fed earlier in the day, began to cry again, his face red and his hands clenched. Emma took him in her arms, trying to calm him, but yesterday's fatigue made her sway. Margaret, sitting in the old armchair in the living room, watched the scene with a mixture of concern and tenderness. "He's hungry," Emma whispered between sobs. I don't know what to do." Margaret stood up and walked over, gently taking Noah into her arms. The baby stopped almost immediately, as if recognizing the warmth and security she exuded. Margaret smiled weakly, feeling an instant connection, a fragile but powerful bond forming between them. "Listen, Emma," Margaret said softly, "he's crying because he needs you and me. We're going to get through this, okay? You're not alone." Emma nodded, her eyes shining with tears. Margaret fetched a bottle, preparing the milk with quiet precision. She showed Emma how to hold Noah properly, how to speak to him gently, how to rock him so he felt safe. Time stretched, each minute seeming to last an eternity. Noah finally calmed down, his half-closed eyes and steady breathing calming the atmosphere. For Margaret, this was more than just a relief, it was the beginning of a responsibility she fully accepted. After a few hours, Emma sat down on the couch, exhausted but happy to see her brother finally at peace. "Thank you, Auntie, thank you for taking him," she murmured. Margaret placed a reassuring hand on her niece's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Emma. You love him and you're looking out for him. That's all that matters." That night, the house in Willow Creek seemed to breathe differently. Every gesture, every glance exchanged between Margaret, Emma, and Noah created a fragile but precious cocoon. Fear and despair gave way to a new warmth, that of protection, love, and hope. In the stillness of the night, Margaret understood something profound. Sometimes welcoming a baby, even for one night, could transform an entire life. And this bond, begun with a simple act of courage and trust, would only grow stronger over time. The first few days with Noah had been a roller coaster of emotions. Emma was up before dawn to prepare milk, change diapers, and make sure her little brother was clean and warm. Margaret, meanwhile, juggled her part-time job with sleepless nights spent rocking Noah when his cries woke her. The house seemed constantly in motion, but every gesture was imbued with a new delicacy. Emma was learning to interpret Noah's cries, to understand his needs even before he expressed them. Margaret, meanwhile, was discovering a unique bond with the child, a silent but profound attachment that filled her with an almost sacred responsibility. Yet life in Willow Creek was not easy. Neighbors, some kind, others envious or critical, were quick to judge. "Are you sure you can handle this, Margaret?" asked Mrs. Thompson, a middle-aged neighbor, as she passed the door one afternoon. "A baby isn't just a distraction. It's work, and a lot of worry." Margaret smiled, but a pang of regret shot through her heart. She knew the criticism wasn't meant out of malice, but it was a reminder of the fragility of their situation. Emma, on the other hand, sometimes felt the pressure mounting, especially when she had to leave Noah to go to school. One particularly difficult afternoon, Noah refused to sleep despite Margaret and Emma's best efforts. The crying intensified, and Margaret's hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. Emma, with tears in her eyes, whispered, "I don't know if I can go on like this." Margaret placed her hand on Emma's. "You can, Emma, because you're not alone. Every day is a challenge, but every smile, every little gesture from Noah, it's worth it. We'll get through this, together." And that night something changed. As Noah cooed softly in Margaret's arms, a bright smile appeared on his face. Emma felt her heart fill with a new warmth. That small smile, innocent but powerful, showed her that all the work, all the fatigue, was not in vain. Life in Willow Creek remained difficult, but solidarity and love created a fragile but precious balance. Each day brought its share of challenges, but also small victories that cemented the bond between Margaret, Emma, and Noah. Emma realized that, despite the obstacles and judgments, she had never been closer to her brother. And Margaret realized that sometimes welcoming a baby turned a life upside down, but also made it richer and more meaningful. Morning was breaking over Willow Creek, bringing soft light that filtered through the worn curtains of the house. Margaret was preparing breakfast while Emma settled Noah on a small blanket in the living room. The baby cooed, intrigued by the colorful toys Emma had hung around him. As they finished putting away the dishes, there was a quiet knock at the door. Surprised, Margaret wiped her hands and went to open it. Standing before her was a young man wearing a white coat and carrying a medical bag. "Hello, my name is Luke Harper," he said with a warm smile. "I'm a doctor in the neighborhood. I heard about your situation, Anne. I wanted to make sure the baby was okay." Emma and Margaret exchanged a surprised look. Margaret spoke, "Thank you, that's kind, but we're fine. Noah is, well, he's managing." Luke smiled softly. "I know you're doing your best. But sometimes even the best parents need a little help. I can give you some tips on feeding and monitoring a 5-month-old baby, and, if you'd like, I can drop by from time to check on him." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. Since their mother had been in the hospital, every day had been a constant challenge, and the idea of a competent adult coming to offer help seemed almost unreal. Margaret, wary but grateful, invited Luke in. They sat around the table, Noah snuggled against Emma. Luke observed the baby carefully, gently feeling his arms and legs, then asked a few questions about his sleeping habits, feeding, and general health. "He's healthy," he finally concluded with a smile. "But I can show you a few techniques to make your days and nights easier. With a baby, every little helps." As the morning progressed, Luke shared simple but valuable advice. He showed Emma how to properly prepare bottles, how to hold Noah to feed and calm him, and how to recognize signs of fatigue or discomfort. Margaret listened attentively, absorbing every word. During a break, Luke shared a personal memory. When I was a child, my mother was often sick. I learned early on what it meant to be on my own. That's why I wanted to help you. No one should feel alone with a baby. Emma felt a lump of emotion rise in her throat. She understood that this new ally was not simply a doctor, but a true moral and practical support for them. Margaret, for her part, felt that this meeting would ease their burden and create a network of protection around Noah. That day, Willow Creek no longer seemed so isolated. Between Margaret, Emma, Noah, and now Luke, a small circle of solidarity was beginning to form, bringing a breath of hope and the promise that, despite the difficulties, they were not alone. A few days later, a heavy, gray sky hung over Willow Creek. Rain returned intermittently, pounding against the windows of the house as a constant reminder that life could be unpredictable and cruel. Emma had just returned from school, exhausted but determined to take care of Noah. She found Margaret in the living room, her face closed and preoccupied, holding a crumpled letter in her hands. "What is it, Auntie?" Emma asked, worried. Margaret took a deep breath. "It's a threat. From my cousin, Robert. He knows you're taking care of Noah, and he thinks he can take him. He says he wants to take care of him his way, but I know exactly what that means." Emma felt a cold shiver run through her body. The thought of someone harming her little brother terrified her. She almost threw herself into her aunt's arms. "We can't let him do this," Emma whispered. "We have to protect him, Auntie." Margaret nodded, her face hardened with determination. "Exactly. We're going to do everything we can to keep Noah safe. And I'm going to need you for that. Every move counts." Night was falling quickly. Margaret installed extra locks on the doors and closed the shutters. Emma, her heart pounding, watched every corner of the house, ready to intervene. Noah slept peacefully in his bed, oblivious to the danger lurking outside. The phone rang suddenly, and Margaret quickly answered. A deep, menacing voice was heard on the other end. "You shouldn't be taking care of that child. He belongs to me." Margaret gripped the receiver, but answered calmly and authoritatively. "Noah doesn't belong to anyone. He's under my protection, and as long as I'm here, he'll stay safe." Emma felt a mixture of fear and admiration for her aunt. Margaret had never seemed so strong, so determined. Danger had awakened in her a part of courage and resilience that Emma had never seen before. To ensure their safety, Margaret contacted Luke. The young doctor soon arrived, checking on the baby's health and suggesting additional measures to protect the house. His presence comforted Emma and Margaret, reminding them that they were not alone in the face of external threats. That night, Margaret stayed up by Noah's side, ready to intervene at the slightest alarm. Emma, exhausted but vigilant, felt more responsible than ever for her brother and grateful to her aunt and Luke. Danger still loomed, but for the first time in days, Emma felt the family had the means to overcome it. In the darkness of Willow Creek, between the pouring rain and the threatening shadows, a silent promise asserted itself: Noah would be protected, no matter the cost. And all the forces gathered around him were ready to face whatever life had in store for them. The next morning, the sky was still overcast, but the atmosphere in Willow Creek had changed. The tension of the previous day seemed to have dissipated, replaced by a collective determination. Margaret, Emma, and Noah had managed to get through the night without incident, but the threat of Robert still weighed on their minds. As Emma was preparing breakfast, a group of neighbors knocked softly on the door. Among them was Mrs. Thompson, who had criticized Margaret a few days earlier, as well as a few other families from the neighborhood. Each brought groceries, diapers, and even toys for Noah. "We know what's going on," Mrs. Thompson said, placing a basket on the table. "And we want to help. No one should have to face this alone." Margaret felt her eyes moisten. The solidarity of these neighbors reminded her that, even in the most difficult times, community could be incredibly strong and protective. Emma smiled shyly, happy to see that love and kindness could be borne even amidst past criticism. Luke, true to his promise, arrived shortly after. He checked on Noah's health, gave nutritional advice, and explained to Margaret and Emma how to anticipate signs of fatigue or discomfort in the baby. His reassuring presence created a safe environment, allowing the two women to take a few moments to breathe. "He's in great shape," Luke concluded, smiling at Emma. "And you two are doing a remarkable job. Noah is lucky to have you." In the days that followed, neighbors organized to create a network of protection around the house. Some offered to watch the street, others to prepare meals for Margaret and Emma so they could focus on Noah. The solidarity became a true safety net, strengthening the bond between the residents of Willow Creek and the family. One evening, as Margaret rocked Noah, the baby looked up at her with his big, bright eyes and smiled. Emma, witnessing the moment, felt her heart fill with emotion. The family had overcome so much in such a short time, and yet, love and protection always prevailed. Margaret gently placed Noah in his bed and turned to Emma. "You see, Emma, even in the darkest times, we can find allies. Solidarity is what makes us stronger." Emma nodded gratefully. She understood that this connection to the community and Luke's support were weapons against the obstacles to come. Together, they were ready to face any challenge, knowing that Noah, the center of their world, would always be surrounded by love and protection. This chapter of their lives, marked by fear and uncertainty, gave way to a new feeling, that of collective strength and hope. In Willow Creek, an invisible but powerful network had formed around a small baby, and every smile, every gesture of support became a step toward a safer and brighter future. The sun shyly broke through the clouds of Willow Creek that morning, as if to herald a turning point in the lives of Margaret, Emma, and Noah. The house, now peaceful after several tense days, exuded a temporary calm. Yet, in Emma and Margaret's hearts, a lingering curiosity and worry demanded answers. As Emma put away Noah's things, Margaret sat down with her, her face serious. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you." Emma looked up, attentive and slightly worried. "What, Auntie?" Margaret took a deep breath. "Your mother," she had planned, even before his health deteriorated, to make sure Noah would never be alone. She had thought of you, of me, and she wanted someone she could trust to take care of him if anything happened to him. Emma felt an intense emotion wash over her. Memories of those weeks of anguish, sleepless nights, and overwhelming responsibilities mingled with a new understanding. "So, it wasn't just because I asked him," she whispered. Margaret shook her head gently. "No, Emma. You were brave, but your mother had faith in us. She knew we would do anything for him, no matter what." Emma felt her eyes fill with tears. The fear and uncertainty she had felt were now turning into gratitude and relief. "I understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't do this alone, we were already a team, even if I didn't know it." Margaret smiled, gently squeezing her niece's hand. "Exactly. And this team will continue to protect Noah. Always." That day, Luke arrived with some medical supplies and brought additional calm to the house. Together, they discussed Noah's future, precautions, and long-term plans for the baby's safe growth. Emma realized that courage wasn't just about facing challenges, but also about understanding and accepting support from others. Margaret, meanwhile, felt that the revelations about their family's past reinforced their shared mission, to protect Noah and create a home filled with love and security. That evening, as Noah slept peacefully, Emma sat down next to her aunt and whispered, "Thank you, Auntie, for everything. Thank you for never giving up." Margaret looked at her tenderly, sensing that, despite the trials of the past and the dangers still present, a brighter future was emerging. The revelations of that day had changed their perceptions, fear had given way to hope, and the family, despite everything, was stronger than ever. In the Willow Creek home, a new feeling was in the air, one of renewed trust, solidarity, and the promise that, from now on, Noah would grow up surrounded by love and protection, ready to face life's challenges with unwavering support. The first rays of spring sunshine illuminated Willow Creek, bringing with them a gentle, comforting warmth. Margaret's home seemed to breathe a new air, filled with serenity and hope. After weeks of anxiety and challenges, the family was finally on the path to a new beginning. Emma and Noah's mother, Catherine, had been transferred home after a long convalescence in hospital. She was slowly regaining her strength, but her movements were still fragile. The smile she offered Emma and Margaret that morning melted away all the accumulated worries. "My darlings," Catherine whispered, her voice weak but full of tenderness. "Thank you for taking care of Noah. You were amazing." Emma, with tears in her eyes, hugged her mother. "We couldn't help it, Mom, he's our family, and we love him." Margaret, for her part, observed the scene with a proud and peaceful smile. The tensions of the past days seemed to have dissipated. Together, they now formed a strong family, ready to face the future. Luke dropped by mid-morning, offering some advice to help Catherine with her recovery and ensure Noah continued to thrive. His constant support had created an additional safety net, allowing Margaret and Emma to focus on rebuilding their daily lives. The following days were marked by laughter, shared meals, and simple but precious moments. Noah gradually discovered his surroundings, smiling at his mother, his aunt, and even Luke, who often came to play with him. Emma felt proud and happy to see her little brother flourishing, surrounded by so much care and love. One afternoon, Margaret took Emma aside in the garden. "You know, Emma, everything we've been through has changed us. We're stronger, more united. And Noah, he's going to grow up in a home filled with security and love." Emma nodded, her voice full of emotion. "I never thought any of this could happen, but I'm happy. Happy we're together." In Willow Creek, life was returning to normal, but with a new intensity. Past trials had forged an unbreakable bond between Margaret, Emma, Noah, and Catherine. Fear and uncertainty were now a thing of the past, replaced by trust, love, and the promise of a bright future. As the sun set over the cottage, Margaret watched Noah play with Emma and Catherine. In her eyes shone the certainty that sometimes the most difficult times lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And in this finally peaceful home, a new chapter of their lives had just been written, a chapter of happiness, resilience, and renewal. A few years had passed in Willow Creek. The rain had given way to long, sunny days and mild evenings filled with birdsong and children's laughter. Margaret's home, still modest, was now overflowing with life and happiness. Noah had grown up. His 5 months of anxiety and uncertainty were over. Today, he was a curious, mischievous, and vibrant boy, surrounded by the unwavering love of his family. Every day, he explored the garden, played with Emma, and received patient guidance from Margaret. Even Luke was part of their daily lives, regularly offering his help and genuine friendship. One spring morning, as Margaret watched Noah running around the garden, Emma approached her with a smile. "Look at him, Auntie, he's so happy. We did a great job." Margaret nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Yes, Emma, and look at us. We've been through so much, but we're still here. Together." Catherine, now fully recovered, joined the group and knelt down to take Noah into her arms. The boy laughed aloud, recognizing every face that had protected him since birth. "I never thought it would all turn out this way," Catherine whispered, her voice full of gratitude. "You've transformed our lives." Margaret placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. "No, Catherine, we only followed our hearts. And look where that got us." Evening was falling gently over Willow Creek. The house was filled with laughter, conversation, and simple but profound happiness. Margaret, Emma, Catherine, and Noah shared this moment like a priceless treasure, aware of all they had overcome. Margaret's heart held a resonant certainty. Sometimes the most difficult trials lead to the greatest victories. And sometimes, love and solidarity are enough to transform despair into light. Noah, asleep in Margaret's arms, still smiled in his dreams. Emma and Catherine looked at him tenderly, and Margaret knew that this family, forged by hardship and courage, would continue to grow in love, protection, and joy. Thus closed this chapter of Willow Creek, but life, as always, went on. A life full of hope, laughter, and promise for the future.